Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video at EICMA in Milan, and we're back at the Moto Morini stand. It really seems like they're pushing the boat out this year with lots of new bikes. All very exciting. It's one of the busiest stands we've seen this week, and specifically, I'm very interested in this one. This is the X-Cape 1200 adventure bike. So you could say a new bigger sibling to the 650 that we rode last year. That bike was quite impressive, especially given the price point, but what about this one? Well, let's go through all of the details to find out. Now, yesterday I showed you guys the new Milano, which looks very nice as well. That's more of a roadster style bike, but the one thing they have in common is this over here. Engine. Well done, mate. It's the V2 Corsa Corta Evo engine, which in English is an 1187cc 87-degree V-twin. And for most of the bikes that they've announced this week, they haven't given full comprehensive specs, but they do say it's capable of around 125 horsepower. So this isn't going to be a Tiger 1200 or GS competitor or Multistrada V4, but more so in that kind of Africa twin or Moto Guzzi V100 Stelvio kind of range that's somewhere in between the middleweights like the 900s and those bigger bikes I just mentioned. It is, of course, Euro 5 plus emissions regulations compliant. That means they can actually sell it. And also they talk a little bit in the press release about it having a nice usable delivery of torque in the mid-range. Perfect for an adventure bike like this, I reckon. 125 horsepower sounds enough for sort of decent touring on the motorway and stuff like that as well. And also, I'm fully expecting it to sound very sweet indeed. Interestingly, on some of the new bikes they've announced, they've done this really nice combination of steel and aluminium frames. So a little bit of trellis at the front, a little bit of aluminium plates at the rear, and it gives it an interesting aesthetic, as well as, you know, probably trying to keep the weight down a bit. With this bike though, they say it's tubular steel. I assume they do that for strength, given it's an adventure bike and it will be intended partly to go off-road. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky to tell the exact makeup of it, partly because of the bodywork and partly because of the brevity of that press release that they've put out so far. But what we can see is fully adjustable suspension. There's an upside-down fork at the front, monoshock at the rear, of course, onto that aluminium swing arm, and they say 170mm of travel on the fork and 160 on the shock. Now, I don't think it's going to be a fully off-road bias, like aggressive off-road adventure bike, but more of a all-rounder adventure tourer. Plenty of wind protection for doing big miles. It looks big, spacious and comfy, but just with a little bit of gravel ability, so you can do that final, you know, dirt road up to your accommodation if you're doing a tour. So things like the wheels, we've got a 19-incher at the front, which gives you more of an on and off-road balance than a big 21, and there's a 17-incher at the rear. Now they're shod with Pirelli Scorpion trail tires. I've actually got these on my bike back home, my Tiger 800. They're pretty much road biased, but very good indeed on tarmac. And this bike gets a 120/70 at the front and a 170/60 at the rear. I've also got to say on the wheels, they're spoked and they're arranged into these sort of clusters of 3, which I think gives it quite a unique look. And although they're laced to the middle of the rim, it does say in the press release that they're tubeless, which should make them easier to fix for most riders. Brakes are from Brembo. They look quite sporty. They're 4-piston, radially mounted monoblock calipers. They look a little bit like Stylemas, which are their sporty caliper, although there's no confirmation of that. But they're on nice big 320mm discs up front, and then there's a fairly substantial 280mm disc at the rear. Also, you've got a Brembo radial master cylinder up on the bars there, so it should be nice and crisp at the lever, and there's a matching Brembo hydraulic clutch lever too. Now, before we get on to the next feature, I just want to say a massive thanks to our sponsors for this week, and that's Metzeler Tyres and Insta360. Now, we use their X3 360 camera for all of our riding footage back home, and we've also been using it at the show here to capture some nice wide angles of the hull, which it does with ease. My favorite thing about using it on the bike is you can just stick it anywhere with one of their various mounts, and you don't really need to worry about getting your framing perfect or getting the camera level, because you can just drag it into the app when you finish your ride, and it's in there that you can reframe it and export landscape or portrait crops and fine-tune everything after the fact. So it's super low stress to use, easy to use, and actually quite creative. I absolutely love using mine, so do check out the link down in the description below to pick up yours. And also, you'll find a code down there which will get you a free gift with every X3 purchased. So once again, a massive thanks to Insta360 for their support. And with that, back to the bike. Now weight again isn't absolutely confirmed, but they roughly say that the curb weight for this bike will be under 250 kilograms. Now whether you consider that good or not really depends on where you're coming from. I think it's on a par with something like the V100 Stelvio we just mentioned. I think that's around the 246 mark. But also BMW recently updated the R1300 GS. You could consider that a bigger, more capable bike, and that now tips the scales at 237 kilograms curb. So yeah, not a lightweight this bike, but also, you know, not terrible either. As for the ergonomics, well, the seat comes in at 860 millimeters, so fairly tall. No word on a low seat accessory, but they do say it is adjustable, so maybe it'll come down a bit on the standard seat. And the rest of the riding position looks absolutely typical for this stature of adventure bike. So wide bars, pulled back towards the rider, and then the on and off road foot pegs with the rubbers that you can take out and really grip onto the pegs with the teeth around the edges. Now, of course, the windscreen is aero optimized to give you optimum comfort on the motorway when you're doing touring miles. And also you'll notice there's a split radiator design, so that probably allows for a little bit of extra front wheel travel. But also the bodywork is then used to divert that hot air away from the rider, and that can help you to stay cool in those hotter climates when engine heat really can become a bit of a snore, especially on a V-twin where you've got one of the cylinders right between your legs. Now tech-wise, we've got a 7-inch color TFT with integrated navigation. You can see it up there on the bike, and it really is quite big, really nice and visible. And I've tried out one of their TFTs before, borrowing their 650 bikes like the X-Cape or the Scrambler, and they do a great job of laying them out in quite a fun way with interesting graphics. Stuff like if you choose the road mode, it's got tarmac in the background. If you choose an off-road mode, they'll put mud in the background and a knobbly tyre as the rev counter. So assume there'll be a similar approach on this bike, and through that you can manage some of the settings. So we've got 4 riding modes. They don't specify which, but they do affect power, traction control and the ABS. And also ABS can be disabled if you're feeling a little bit more confident riding off-road. Tyre pressure monitoring comes as standard, which is a great feature if you're touring. Of course, you want to know if you got a puncture as soon as possible. And there's also all the mod cons that you could wish for, so cruise control, a quick shifter, and LED lighting all round, and a little bit of a shout out for that headlight, which is a very distinctive design. Sort of like the X-Cape 650, but a little bigger, more exaggerated, and definitely striking in the looks department. Now, I don't see it on this particular bike that's on the stand here, but they did say in the press release as well that also there'll be a blind spot radar available. So I assume there'll be a radar on the back, and then typically with a system like that, you get warnings in the mirrors if someone's sitting off to one side in your sort of rear 3/4. No word on a front-facing radar to open up stuff like active cruise control, but I think for me, having tried plenty of bikes with both, blind spot warnings are probably the most useful radar-enabled feature on the most regular basis. No price on this one as of yet, as with many of the bikes this week, and it is the all-important context, but you'd be imagining for a bike of this stature from Moto Morini, what, 14, 15k, maybe something like that. And so realistically, you're in and around that sort of Africa twin price point, but still hopefully undercutting those more powerful, more premium adventure bikes. For me, I think the looks are going to be something that might attract people. It really does stand out from other bikes on the market, but maybe it'll be a little bit divisive and not for everyone because it is quite modern looking. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. Also check out our EICMA playlist, which you can see on the screen down here. Loads of great new bikes launched this week, so do check it out. Hit subscribe if you haven't already if you want to see all of our videos as soon as they go live. Many thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.